From spending millions during a cost of living crisis to secretly pressuring government officials, King Charles III has made some seriously controversial calls since taking the throne. And trust me, the British public has not been happy about it. In this video, we're breaking down the 9 most shocking decisions that left people absolutely fuming. If you thought the monarchy was all about tradition and playing it safe, think again. Let's dive in. Controversy number 1. The coronation cost first up, and honestly, one of the most tone-deaf decisions of his reign. King Charles III's £72 million coronation during the UK's worst cost of living crisis in decades. Think about that number for a second, £72 million. While millions of Britons were literally choosing between heating and eating, while food banks were overflowing, the king was planning the most extravagant party in recent history. The coronation included a golden carriage procession, displays of the crown jewels, and ceremonies that lasted hours. And here's what really angered people. Polling showed that over 60% of Brits believed the royal family should pay for it themselves instead of the taxpayers footing the bill. That money could have paid for 24 million free school meals in London alone. It could have given every food bank in the UK more than £38,000 each. Campaign groups like Republic called it unethical to spend that kind of money on a parade when children were going to school hungry. Graham Smith, their chief executive, said it was like the royals were completely out of touch with ordinary people suffering. And honestly, the public agreed. Over half of Brits weren't even interested in watching the coronation. Controversy number 2. The cash scandal. Now let's talk about something that makes this one even worse. Before he was king, Charles was accepting millions in cash donations from incredibly questionable sources. We're talking about cash, actual suitcases full of money from the Qatari prime minister. Between 2011 and 2015, Charles received approximately 3 million euros from Sheikh Hamad bin Jassim bin Jaber Al Thani. In one instance, he literally accepted a suitcase containing 1 million euros in cold hard cash. But it doesn't stop there. He also accepted donations totaling around $1.2 million from half-brothers of Osama bin Laden. Yes, you heard that right. While the payments were technically legal, critics absolutely ripped into him. People said he showed a complete disregard for Qatar's horrific human rights violations. One observer even said it made him look like a South American drug baron, rather than a future king of the United Kingdom. The fact that he was willing to accept money from such morally questionable sources raised serious questions about his judgment and where his loyalties actually lay. Controversy number 3. Political interference. Here's something many people don't realize. The British monarchy is supposed to stay out of politics. Full stop, that's the whole deal. But Charles, he's been interfering in government for decades, and he kept doing it right up until becoming king. Between 2004 and 2005, leaked correspondence called the Black Spider Memos revealed that Charles was sending confidential letters directly to Prime Minister Tony Blair on all sorts of political issues. We're talking about badger culling, farming policies, herbal medicine regulation, supermarket practices, you name it. Charles was lobbying the government about it. On badger culling specifically, Charles called people who opposed the cull intellectually dishonest. He literally pressured the Prime Minister to start killing badgers because of cattle TB issues. Critics said this was completely inappropriate for someone who was supposed to be politically neutral. Even worse, it later came out that Charles had been receiving confidential government papers that even elected ministers hadn't seen. One senior MP called him Britain's best informed lobbyist. The problem? That's not what a constitutional monarch is supposed to be doing. The entire point of the monarchy is to be above politics, not secretly pulling strings behind the scenes. Controversy number 4. Homeopathy and pseudoscience. King Charles is absolutely obsessed with alternative medicine, especially homeopathy, a form of medicine that has basically zero scientific backing. And we're not just talking about him having these opinions. He's actually been using his position to try and push pseudoscience into British healthcare policy. In 2019, he became the official patron of the Faculty of Homeopathy, which essentially gave royal legitimacy to a practice that most scientists consider basically useless. The Good Thinking Society, which promotes evidence-based science, called his endorsement obscene and said it was a missed opportunity to actually help people, but it goes even deeper. As king, he appointed Dr. Michael Dixon as head of his royal medical household, a doctor famous for promoting homeopathy, faith healing, and herbalism. This isn't someone's personal hobby. This is a senior palace official who now manages a team of doctors at Buckingham Palace and represents the royal family and talks with the government about healthcare policy. Think about that. The person running the royal medical household believes that faith healing can help chronic illnesses. Scientists and medical professionals have been left absolutely stunned by these choices. Controversy number 5. Prince Andrew eviction. Okay, so while many people actually supported Charles's decision to finally kick his brother Prince Andrew out of Royal Lodge after the Epstein scandal just kept getting worse, the way he handled it was controversial for different reasons. In October 2025, Charles officially stripped Andrew of all his remaining titles and evicted him from the mansion. Now, Andrew has been tied to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein for years, and the scandal just wouldn't go away. So on the surface, you'd think people would be celebrating, but here's the controversy. Andrew had been living in Royal Lodge under an incredibly cheap lease. We're talking about a peppercorn rent of basically nothing, despite the massive upkeep costs. For years, Charles basically allowed his brother to continue living there, while the monarchy's reputation was being dragged through the mud. The decision came only after intense public pressure and new allegations surfaced in Virginia Giuffre's memoir. It made people wonder, why did it take this long? Why did Charles need public outrage to force his hand? And why had Andrew been allowed to live this incredibly cushy life at taxpayer expense while covered in scandal? The public felt Charles had dragged his feet on something that should have been dealt with far earlier. Controversy number 6. Excluding Harry and Meghan. King Charles has made several controversial decisions regarding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and they've absolutely enraged supporters of the couple. During the coronation planning, Harry and Meghan were initially told they'd be included in important briefings, then suddenly excluded because only working royals could attend. The briefing happened just before a major reception, which would have meant Harry had to leave the palace as guests were arriving, so ultimately they didn't attend at all and didn't get crucial briefing notes until 11 p.m. that night. Then in April 2024, Charles made an official statement that Harry and Meghan would not be returning as working members of the royal family. While many think this decision was justified, others, particularly Harry and Meghan supporters, saw it as unnecessarily harsh and as Charles deliberately trying to cut them out of the family at a time when Harry was dealing with family health issues. Controversy number 7. Renting royal properties to tourists. This one is more subtle but equally controversial to people who care about the monarchy's image. Charles has been renting out royal properties to tourists, which critics say is completely inconsistent with royal values and traditions. The whole point of royal residences is that they're meant to be exclusive, dignified spaces dedicated to the crown's functions. But under Charles, there's been a shift toward commercializing these properties. People saw this as him being desperate to make money, which seemed pretty insulting coming from one of the wealthiest people in the world. It felt like Charles was treating royal heritage as a money-making opportunity rather than something sacred. Controversy number 8. Camila as Queen Consort. This one's been brewing since before Charles even became king. When Queen Elizabeth II revised her Platinum Jubilee message and confirmed that Camila would be titled Queen Consort, it absolutely infuriated die-hard royalists and Diana supporters. For decades, the public narrative was that Camila was the other woman, the one who broke up Charles and Diana's marriage. The idea of her being crowned queen was like a slap in the face to Diana's memory. There were massive protests. People carried signs saying, "Not my queen." The public felt Charles was basically celebrating his affair and disrespecting one of the most beloved royals of all time. While Charles argues that this was following Queen Elizabeth's wishes, and while some people have warmed up to Camilla, a significant portion of the British public still sees her coronation as Charles making a terrible decision purely for personal reasons. Controversy number 9. Homelessness and inequality messaging. Finally, there's been criticism about the disconnect between Charles's messaging on issues like homelessness and inequality, and his actual actions as king. While he's given speeches about tackling social issues, his first act was to spend £72 million on a coronation. While he talks about caring for the vulnerable, he maintained his brother in a palace while the monarchy was being scandalized. Critics say Charles presents himself as this enlightened, progressive monarch who cares about social issues, but his decisions tell a completely different story. It's the hypocrisy that really angers people. Charles wants credit for being concerned about the environment, poverty, and inequality, but his choices prioritize tradition, family loyalty, and personal interests over actually helping people. There you have it, 9 controversial decisions that have left the British public absolutely fed up with King Charles III. From the coronation spending to the homeopathy obsession, from political interference to the Camila situation, Charles has managed to upset people across the entire spectrum of British society. The core issue seems to be that Charles talks a big game about modernizing the monarchy and being progressive, but his actual decisions often seem tone-deaf, self-serving, or wildly out of touch with what ordinary people are actually going through. The question now is, will King Charles learn from these controversies and actually change course? Or will he continue making decisions that prove why his approval ratings remain stubbornly low even compared to other members of the royal family?